Hello everyone and welcome to our newest Mooc session. Today's topic will be API versus UI and considerations on test case design. I will be your host today. My name is József Szendrődy. I'm from the Academy team as a training consultant, and I'm happy to hear with me Søren Skupin.
Hi everyone.
He's here as a service consultant who has about 4 years of experience with Tricentis Tosca, and he has the role of test design specialist. Before we go to the interesting part, first let me introduce the housekeeping rules. Sorry for those of you who have heard it many times, but as you know, we have to go through them. First of all, you might have realized that everybody is muted during this session. It is because we want to have as smooth session as possible. And with that, if you want to ask any questions during the sessions, you can do that by asking the questions at the question box. But I have to remind you guys that these questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Usually there are a lot of questions. We will try to answer all of them, but take into considerations that we are working with a limited amount of time. And for last, as of course, you can check the previous recordings at the link visible on screen, and this MOOC will be also recorded, so you will be able to watch it later if you miss it or if you don't have the time for it. Our setup for today is going to be the usual. First, we're going to go with some concepts, some theory to have a better understanding of the topic. Then it will be followed up by a demonstration, and then, as always, a Q&A session. As I said, during the session you can ask questions, but use please the question box. Alright, and now I'm gonna leave you to Søren.
Hello guys. Also a very warm welcome from my side. Again, my name is Søren Skupin. I'm a service consultant here at Tricentis and mainly focused on test case design issues. So today also Thomas Mondl should have been with us. Unfortunately, he has a client appointment and won't be available for our session. So I do it on my own, but all the content we develop together. So about the agenda, I would like to have a very quick introduction into the topic of API and UI testing, as well as Tosca and the testing flow. I would like to go over a couple of considerations on API and UI tests, as well as I have brought you a short demonstration about our topic in a project situation. I will have a use case ready for you guys. We will create a test case design and we will think about automating test cases, API, UI, or we can also think about manual testing. Let's start. So as a very basic introduction on what is meant by UI, API, we do have different layers in our application. So the most common layer every application user is facing is a user interface, and this is displaying the business logic. So we as users are able to make inputs into our applications, as well as we can receive certain outputs that were processed. The actual processing of this functionalities we are using with the application is done by the application programming interface. So this is containing the business logic, and it's communicating to the user interface, but as well as to the data storage, which will be here the last layer containing all the business data. The project example I have brought to you is basically this schema. We will have a user interface, we do have some services available, and there is some data storage available where we might check if our data was processed accordingly. Let's come to a testing project and let's discuss a bit the possible flows for our testing activities. So let's guess we do have a testing project and a new sprint starts. We would need to define our requirements on what to test. We might have epics and user stories. And then we can decide, do we want to go for specification-based testing? So we could start with test case design and think about our test data, relevant test data combinations. Or we do also have another chance on going for exploratory testing, where we would need to create certain test sessions. And as soon as the development has delivered us artifacts that we can actually test, we could also run this exploratory tests as well. The topic for today is our test case design and how we can use it for later on test case specification. So in this flow, we do see automated test cases, manual test cases, and test data management. For the test specification line or column here, but the very high-level testing flow is not telling us how to test exactly. So what technology we are using, API, or are we going for the user interface, automated or manual? So we will discuss this later as well. Once the artifacts are ready, like the specified test cases, also from technical perspective, we might go for our test execution, design our sprint execution, or adjust our regression test portfolio. So the very focus for today's Mooc should be the test case design and its reusability. So let's think you are at the beginning of the sprint. You will get a specification document from the business. So that's what needs to be implemented in this sprint. And you as the tester can think about the relevant test cases to test the related requirement. So you might think about relevant business parameter, you think about test data and relevant test data combinations. Once your test case design is finished, you can go for whatever you want to do with this defined logical test cases. You can go for manual tests, you can go for automated UI tests, API tests, or even orchestrated service virtualization. So the main story, or also what I want to highlight, is that even if there are no artifacts ready from the development, so which you can actually test, you can already start with creating your test case design or adjust an existing test case design. And then once artifacts are ready, you can go for the test specification also in the blue section in Tosca. Let's continue with the API considerations. So quite high level, but I would say very useful, is to think about advantages and also disadvantages of API testing. So one of the main advantages, I do think, is the speed, because Tosca is testing the API services in an incredible speed. With this speed, you can go with a lot of different variants, so data combinations or scenarios, in a very short time span. Also, if you test early, you are testing early since the API is developed before the UI. And also the API is more stable than the UI. Disadvantages might be if there already is an UI existing. With testing only the API, you're not automatically testing the UI. As well as you need a technical understanding of what the service is doing and what values might be different to a user interface test. And also I would say the initial preparation effort is quite high because you have to directly communicate with the dev team. You would probably need a definition file or something like this. So you would need to run to business as well as to the development department. But not an advantage and not a disadvantage. The API tests is totally owned by the testing department. So it's not in the responsibility of the development. Let's quickly go through the UI considerations. Here again, the advantages might be that UI tests are more focused on user and user experience. As well, the SMEs can much easier be involved into the testing activities, and you might have less initial effort on testing. Let's say a manual test is quite easy handled. All development involvement is optional because you would have a UI available and you can work with it on your own. Some disadvantages might be that UI testing compared to API testing is quite slow, and you can go for less variance or it gets more resource intense. Also, you're testing quite late since the UI is developed last. And maybe you have also this experience if there are new applications developed, the user interface might be not very stable or is changing from time to time that it makes test automation or testing quite difficult. And here the same, so UI test is owned by the test and not by the development. Okay, let's continue with the demo. So, to give you a quick walkthrough or introduction into the project situation, I want to talk about, we do have a sample application called Tricentis Bank, and this is totally a local installation file here. I do have a local web server which I can run. I just have to enter a port that is running on my local machine. If I press start, I do have this link which I can follow, and the user interface should pop up. The use case I want to discuss today is quite simple. The Tricentis Bank has a customer management system. If I navigate there, I will be able to search for customers, or I can also create new customers. So if I choose new customer, I will have a master data screen here. I will have to fill this out, press save, and hopefully my customer is created with his data and a customer number is generated. So let's move a step back. We are at the beginning of our sprint, and we are in Tosca. We have set up these requirements. We would need to test the API as well. We would need to test the user interface. The development department is still.
Sorry, I borrowed this chair from here.
Okay.
Still under development. But as I told you, we can already start with a test case design. I have brought you therefore a test sheet template where I make a copy of. I place it here and let's call it create customer. So first of all, I would need to run to business that they provide me with the relevant business attributes. They might tell me the logic of the customer creation process. And I do have this ready here in this file. They provided some business attributes for me. I copy this, place it in my process, create element structure from clipboard. I do have the attributes ready for my test case design. Let's say there's a precondition as well. It's the app must be open, otherwise this is not working. So to shorten this test case design a bit, I just want to focus on two business parameters here, the credit rating and the customer type. Let's say we do have different instances leading to different scenarios on this customer creation. And again, the business department has provided me all relevant instances for the credit rating. I will create the instances from clipboard. I will ask the business on what would be the straight-through instance, so I can later on go with linear expansion. They told me it's AA, and BBB is invalid. So Tricentis Bank is not accepting BBB customers because of their poor credit rating. So the second values or instances I would need to get are the instances for the customer type. I again copy this information from my specification document, paste it here as instances from clipboard. I will again ask the business what would be the most common, most frequent instance here. They told me it's the private customer, and I mark this as straight through. So that's pretty much it for now. Now, once we have created this attribute structure and we have also for business relevant attributes assigned our instances, we can go for generating instances. As I told you, I will go for linear expansion. Here we have a straight through created, and every other instance is varying in just one instance. So we do have test cases where each of the credit ratings is applied and the additional customer types as well. So in total it should be 9 instances. Let's check. It's fine. So of course there must be a verification. Let's say first we expect a message from the system. For all valid instance test case scenario, it should be a success message. Let's keep it very high level at this point, except the BBB should be an error. As well as we expect a customer ID to be created, but we don't know this information yet since the system is generating it. So from a very high level perspective, this could be our test case design outcome. We also could think of values, like values for this business attributes having no instance assigned. Let's quickly fill this up. To complete this, I will go with fill empty value specific and go just with Joseph Tester. He's born, let's say, 1980. He lives at the test street. His city is Vienna. The zip is 1234. The identification number of him would be AB123. We fill up the office. It's also Vienna. and the issuing date, let's say he renewed his passport. So this could be a draft for our test case design. I will tell the business or the controlling entity of our test project by linking the create customer test sheet to the related requirement that we have finished our test case design. I will also make the test case design column visible. And now we are waiting for the development department to give us relevant artifacts we can test. So, surprisingly, the development department has told me that the application programming interface for this customer creation is ready, and we could start with our API scan. I will go for API scan. The development department has provided me an URI where I can scan this service. I entered the URI, press OK, and Tosca has scanned several services. I want to focus on the create customer. That's how the service would look like the request. We do see here all the fields. We also have a test case design from name 1, name 2, up to customer type and credit rating. So I will try to send it because Tosca has created some default values for me here. I send it, and it's not working. I will get an error message here. So I would need to run back to the development department and would need to request from them more inputs on how to get this service working. So that's what I meant in my introduction session, that for API tests, the development department might need to be involved to make these tests up and running. So I went there, development told me there are specific values for customer type and credit rating. They provided to me. Let's go with the value. I have it here in my specification. This was the customer type. Should be have the value private customer, like this explicit wording, as well as credit rating. I will paste it here. So I have now got the values from development. I try to get it running again, and surprisingly, yes, we get a status code 200 OK. We do have the customer number generated, and I now know that this API scan would work. So I will create an API test case out of it. So processed, finished. I close this because I don't need it anymore. I do have my modules created here. I will move this to my project modules folder, probably call it API customer creation, something like this. I also have test cases already created for the API. I will make a copy of the naming for the readability. And now let's have a quick look on our API modules. I don't have any module attributes yet, but I can select them from the technical view. So I will go with all of these business attributes becoming module attributes. The same for the response, but here I will be picky, go with just with the customer number and with the status code. Status code. So that's what I need to create an API test case. So I will open this in the blue section, expand it here. And one way I could go with the values, with the default values. Default, probably buffer a number, customer ID. Like this would be hard-coded test case, just one test case for the create customer. We can give it a try and run this. And it runs through, so it's fine. But I don't want to have my test case hard-coded. I will have it linked to my test sheet. So I will quickly create a template. Customer creation template. I convert this to a template. Now I can drag and drop my test sheet to my template. So I will check on the values we have here. I will clear all the hard-coded values. I will keep the customer ID buffer step, but the rest should come from my test sheet. So I will give it a try and link it again so he fills up some values for me. And now we do have to do the first adjustment in our test case design. So what we have here in test case design is just the logical, business readable test design. And for the explicit values we do have used for the credit rating and customer type, as you remember in the API scan, I would need to assign concrete values to this logical attributes. So just underneath the logical instances for the credit rating, I will create values for API. And again, I do have this from the specification. I would need to fill here all the values for the relevant credit ratings. The same for customer type. So the customer type has an API scan, a specific value we would need to address to get this running. API value API value API, and I will go with the value for private customer. It was provided from the development. So at least our straight-through instance is filled up with concrete values. We would need to continue for business customer sole trader to get this working. And then I would need to make sure to link the corresponding concrete value attribute from test case design to the value field in my template. So credit rating would be this. I'm not sure why he is creating a value here. Customer type, I will go with the customer type. So, and the same we would need to do for the verification. So the message for message API is different from the message in the UI. Let's go with this 200 OK. Of course, we could fill up the values for the other test cases, but just as a showcase, we do have all the values ready from the test sheet that we can link to the template. I will quickly link also the message API, or better called the status code. And my template could be ready for instantiation. I create the template instances, start instantiation, and let's quickly check if the straight through is working. So I have here my template instance folder. Let's quickly run the straight through. Well, let's check it first. It has now fetched the values from the test case design. It's filled up, hopefully in the correct format. For the values, we are buffering a customer ID and we're verifying a status code. Run in Scratchbook. Okay, everything's green. Looks good. And just to tell the management that we made some progress, I will link at least the straight through to the corresponding requirement in the requirement set. So we do see the straight through is done. We would need to finish the rest of the test cases if we would have more time. So guess what? The development department has already implemented the first draft of the user interface. We are now switching to the second part of my demonstration. We do have in the banking application, I showed it to you in the first place, this customer menu and this screen for the entering the master data of the customer. So to shorten things up a bit, I have predefined the modules for it. So I will just create a new folder in test cases, call it UI customer creation, and I will use my predefined modules for create customer. We have it here, banking demo customer. Probably we would need the navigation bar. We probably need the search, and we need the master data. So I think you are knowing what's next. I will just check the steps we have to perform. When it comes to the actual input of the customer master data, we can again reflect on our create customer test sheet, but we might need different values for the credit rating or for the customer type. So what I do next is I do create a new attribute and call it value UI, and I go with the concrete value for the credit rating AA, just to check. We do have here a drop box on checking the different credit ratings, as well we have an options for different customer types here. So I will go with the exact naming of these boxes to make sure this is working. For the customer type, it's the same. I will create a value attribute, call it private customer. So this information should not come from the application itself, but better from a specification document. So you make sure this is also what the business has requested. So when I go back to my test case, create customer UI, let's call it UI, I will convert this into a template. I will link again the same test sheet to this template now. He automatically fills up some specific values for me. Not everything is right with the auto creation of the XL references for the customer type. I would need to go with a value for UI, and for the credit rating I go also with the value UI, and I will go with the name 1, name 2, date of birth. And for the Tricentis banking application, it's the case that not every value field has to be entered. So it's kind of a draft. I just have to enter the name 1, name 2, customer type, date of birth, and the credit rating to make sure a customer can be created via the user interface. As you remember the API test case, this is not working if only one of the values is not in the proper value format or something like this. But for the UI, this would work. And let's give it a try. I will instantiate this template. I will get my template instances here. I'm navigating to the customer, selecting new customer, enter my data and click save. Let's just give it a try if this would work. Okay, and we do see that at least one of the input parameters we have defined as values in our test sheet is not in the proper format. So in this case, I would navigate back to the test sheet, and also for the date of birth would create a sub-instance folder. So first I convert this into let's say a logical instance. The date of birth must be valid. But when it comes to UI automation, we would need to have the correct date. I'm having the wrong, sorry, switching to German keyboard. I have the wrong expression. So I'm just going with the date. So fine. I'm assigning this sub value to the template. So I can reinstantiate. And working here with a dynamic expression. So let's check again. And we do see we get a success message here that Joseph Tester was created, as well as we get a customer number. So having this as a draft, of course this was only a demo and maybe not following all best practices with the readability and with the structure of the test cases. But the story I was trying to tell is that although when the development has no testing artifacts for you ready. You can already create your test case design. You can reflect on relevant data combinations, first on logical level, and later on you would need to adjust your test sheet related to the testing you want to go for. And switching back to our presentation, this is what I meant during the theory part. You can have this test data master repository containing your test cases. You're adjusting it according to your test you want to perform, and you always have to think of the test case design as something that is dynamic. So in the first sprint, maybe like a given artifact is produced, and in the second sprint this artifact is adjusted. So maybe business information is leaving the test context or is added to the test context, and you can have this test sheet as a data structure, as a maintaining platform for your test data as well as your test data combinations, and you can reuse it in multiple ways with Tricentis Tosca. Guys, I was very happy to have this session today with you. I have to close at this point because we're running out of time. From my perspective, it's a very short time span to have just 1 hour to talk about this topic, but I hope you got an idea on what I was addressing and how cool and fun test case design is, and on how multiple ways you can use it in your testing project. I would say test case design is totally underestimated. You have plenty of benefits. Maybe we have another Mooc session on this, benefits of having test case design, or let me think about something. I will have to hand over to Joseph right now. Maybe we do have some questions, and happy to answer.
All right, thank you very much. And yes, you're right. We are now at the question sections, and you guys have asked lots of questions. I'm gonna pick some of them and I'm gonna read them out so everybody can know the answer for those questions. And here the first one comes. So, Sarah, what would you say? What are the most challenging parts of an API tester's life?
That's a tricky question. So I'm not sure. I would say it's different from project to project. What resources are available? What time do you have? But in general, and also as I introduced it in the theory block, going for API tests, it's always challenging because you are somehow the interface between business and development. And it might be tricky to get all information necessary for setting up tests as well as perform tests. You have seen it in the demo I gave, where you have the API scan and you try to scan something and it's somehow not working, and if you don't have a clue about how these services are working, you might need to run to development or like have a lot of clarifications on how this has to be done. So I would say from my perspective, this would be the most pain point. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna go with the second question now, which was that the applications which were used during the demo, are they available for everyone?
Thanks to this question, I was expecting it. So unfortunately, it's not directly available, but the Tricentis banking application is part of one of the internal training programs we do have for partners. So we use this for certification trainings and also for recap sessions, some kind of classroom trainings. So there, it is definitely available, but I cannot provide it like in the support portal for download or something like this. I do know there is an online course available, which was the automation specialist for API scan. I do know that there are sample applications available where you can proceed in the same way and where you can increase your API scan skills. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Thank you guys for the great questions and of course for the answers, Suren. Unfortunately, I have to end the Q&A session now since we are running out of time. Having said that, let me talk about our upcoming Mooc. The title is Taking the First Steps in Tosca Commander. The Mooc will take place on the 7th of November, and I can highly recommend. I'm sure everybody will find some takeaways. In addition to that, I want to say that we had Accelerate last week, where we had several topics covered from our great presenters, and you have the possibility to access its content on our website. So don't forget to check it out. And as always, to contact our support, you can do that by writing to support@tricentis.com. If you want to write to our training team, then academy@tricentis.com. You have access to knowledge base and the online manual on the links shown on screen. And of course, as I said before, you have the possibility to access our Mooc recordings as well. And of course, this Mooc will be uploaded. So if you missed it or just came at the very last time, don't worry. It will be uploaded. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Søren, for the great presentation once again. Bye-bye.